The following program is brought to you in living color.
Hi, I'm Tony Figueroa, and welcome to this edition of This Week in TV History. As always, you can read my blog, childhoodtelevision.blogspot.com, or you can hear me on TV Confidential, a radio talk show about television. And 45 years ago, Jack Tripper fell off his bike right behind me. Yes, March 15th, 1977 was the premiere of Three's Company, an American sitcom based on a British sitcom called Man About the House. Now, the show starred John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, Suzanne Summers, and as the Ropers, Norman Fell and Audra Lindley. Now, the show is set in Santa Monica, California. Culinary student Jack Tripper is asleep in the bathtub of this apartment, which is the home to Janet Wood and Chrissy Snow. They just had a big party the night before for their roommate Eleanor, who went into labor on her, supposed to be, I believe, her bridal shower. And Jack becomes a new roommate. He knows how to cook, he's not bad looking, and it's a good idea to have a guy around the house. Mr. Roper did not like the idea of this guy living with two women. Janet convinced them that it would be okay by telling Mr. Roper that Jack was gay. So, mayhem ensues. They were a lot of fun. Lucille Ball was a big fan of this show. In fact, she did a retrospective episode. Now remember, Lucille Ball did not like All in the Family and was very hurt when this show premiered on her network CBS. But she loved the antics of Three's Company. In fact, she said that there were some familiar settings. You lived right above the landlords and there was a lot of physical comedy. Many of the premises of the show involved misunderstanding, let's say, only hearing one half of a phone call, or hearing something through a closed door and then jumping to the wrong conclusion. Yeah, that was many a plot. The physical comedy of John Ritter steals many scenes, in fact, many episodes. Jack is a guy who enjoys the company of women, and often his ability to exaggerate, or his inability to exaggerate a circumstance, would get him in trouble. Usually Jack would learn his lesson in the end. As the show went on, other characters were introduced. Shortly after the first episode, we meet Larry Dallas, who turns out to be Jack's best friend, a used car dealer. He is a little bit better at manipulating the truth, and sometimes he does not learn his lesson at the end. And then there was a new neighbor named Lana, and it was played by Ann Wedgeworth. This character did not last very long. She was a middle-aged woman who had the hots for Jack. The Ropers later moved on to their own sitcom called The Ropers, where they move into this luxurious complex after they sell the building. And there is a new owner of the building who's only seen once. His name is Bart Furley, but the character that we now get to know is his brother, Ralph Furley, who was hired to manage the building. Now, there is something about Mr. Roper and Mr. Furley. Mr. Roper did let the new owners know that Jack is gay because Bart would not allow a straight guy to live with two beautiful girls, or just two girls. So Mr. Furley knew the lie, but didn't know it was a lie, and continued to have the same reaction to Jack. The reaction that Mr. Roper had to Jack was very much making fun of him, often making gestures that he's a Tinkerbell or a fairy, and the traditional slurs of the time. He was also a little fearful that Jack might be coming on to him, or that he's trying to convert him. Mr. Furley was a little bit more forward-thinking, at least he was in his own mind. In fact, Mr. Furley tried to cure Jack of his homosexuality, thinking that if he was just maybe immersed in the world of heterosexuality, I guess he tried to do what the stop smoking clinics did. I was just hit in the face by a bubble. Anyway, there were other cast changes besides the departure of the Ropers. Eventually, Suzanne Summers did leave the show after some she wanted a better deal than what she was getting, and unfortunately that did not happen. How about if we just leave it at that? She did call in sick a few times, and the producers decided to diminish her character a little bit. For a while, she was only appearing in the epilogue, a scene that would be shot a day earlier. And the premise was that she went back home to take care of her sick mom. And the new roommate was Chrissy's cousin Cindy, played by Jenny Lee Harrison. Now, where Chrissy was kind of ditzy, Cindy was klutzy. So Cindy was great for the physical comedy that John Ritter could provide. But a lot of the dumb lines that normally Chrissy would be saying were handed off to Mr. Furley. After a while, Cindy was replaced by Priscilla Barnes, who played Terry Alden, who was a nurse. And the show kind of stayed that way for the remaining seasons. Now, the show eventually came to an end in 1984. In the spring of 1984, the season ended with a cliffhanger where Jack falls in love. And then in the season premiere, basically it's one more episode of Three is Company, which served as the backdoor pilot for a new show called Three's a Crowd, which starred John Ritter and Mary Carteret. In the episode, Janet gets married off, Terry goes off to Hawaii, and Jack decides to move in with his girlfriend in an apartment above his restaurant. You know, I have actually contacted TV Land to do a TV Landmark segment here, to actually have a statue of Jack Tripper on his bicycle. I mean, we've done it with, Jackie Gleason and with Andy Griffith. I think this would be a prime spot for that type, but I digress. Again, you can read my blog, childoftelevision.blogspot.com. You can hear me on TV Confidential, a radio talk show about television. And I'm Tony Figueroa. Stay tuned.